Night has already erased the horizon when the searchers reach the slope. Wind presses snow sideways, hard enough to sting through wool and leather. Their flashlights catch something unnatural against the white canvas, half buried, slumped like a wounded animal. When they pull it free, they realize the tent is still standing, but it is empty, slashed open from the inside. Not ripped by wind or torn by claws, but cut deliberately, hurriedly. Inside lie boots lined up near the entrance, heavy coats folded, axes, food, notebooks, money, even cameras. Everything a human needs to survive a Ural winter left behind. Outside, leading away from the tent and down the mountain, are footprints, bare feet, socks, one shoe here, another there. The steps are uneven but calm, not the frantic scatter of panic. They lead into darkness, toward a forest that promises no shelter from temperatures that can kill in minutes. This is where the question is born, frozen into the snow. How did 9 experienced hikers walk away from safety and into death? Their bodies will not be found all at once. The mountain gives them back slowly, as if deciding how much truth it can tolerate at a time. 2 are discovered first, beneath a cedar tree, barefoot, their hands burned as though they had clawed at firewood with nothing but skin. Higher up the slope, 3 more lie sprawled in the snow, frozen mid-stride as if they had tried to return to the tent and failed. Weeks later, after the snow begins to melt, the remaining 4 emerge from a ravine, crushed ribs, shattered skulls, internal injuries more violent than a car crash, yet with little damage to the skin. One is missing her tongue, another is missing eyes. Some clothes show traces of radiation. The official cause of death will be written as a force of nature that the hikers were unable to overcome, and the case will be closed quietly. But nothing about this scene feels quiet. Nothing about this mountain feels finished. Before we step back and understand how they came here, certain truths stand in the open, undeniable as the cold. The tent was cut from the inside. No footprints suggest another group approached or attacked. The hikers left in an orderly manner, not running, not scrambling. The injuries on some bodies were catastrophic, while others showed none beyond frostbite. The temperatures that night could freeze exposed skin in minutes. The slope they camped on was known by a local name that translates to Dead Mountain, and for decades, no explanation has managed to put every piece into place without leaving something broken behind. This is not a story that begins with fear. It begins with confidence, with youth, with a belief that preparation and discipline can tame even the harshest landscapes. To understand how 9 people ended up scattered across a frozen mountainside, half-dressed and silent, we must walk backward through time, retracing their steps before the snow erased them. The Dyatlov Pass incident, as it will later be named, takes place deep in the northern Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, a region of long winters, short days, and brutal weather. In those years, the Soviet state celebrates endurance. Exploration, engineering, and physical toughness are not hobbies. They are virtues. Hiking clubs are not casual weekend gatherings, but disciplined organizations where routes are classified by difficulty and survival is taught methodically. Winter expeditions are especially respected. They test not only the body, but the mind. The group that climbs into these mountains is not reckless. They are among the most capable hikers available. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, is a young engineering student known for calm decision-making and technical skill. Most of the others are students or recent graduates, builders of radios, bridges, and machines. They are in their early 20s, with lives ahead of them. Jokes shared in notebooks, songs written by campfire light. One member is older, a war veteran who has already survived things most people never face. This is not a gathering of thrill-seekers chasing danger blindly. It is a team that believes, with good reason, that it knows how to survive. Their goal is ambitious but achievable, a winter ski trek across remote terrain to reach Otorten Mountain, earning the highest certification for difficulty. Such routes demand strict planning. Equipment lists are checked and rechecked. Food is calculated down to calories. Navigation relies on maps, compasses, and experience. They know how to build shelters, start fires in snow, and ration energy. They know that mistakes in winter do not forgive. And yet, something happens on the final night that strips away all of that knowledge in a matter of moments. When search teams later reconstruct the campsite, they notice details that refuse to align. The tent is positioned on an exposed slope rather than in the forest below, where trees could break the wind. This may have been a deliberate training choice, or simply exhaustion pushing them to stop earlier than planned. Inside the tent, everything suggests a normal evening. Food laid out, boots removed in an orderly fashion, diaries mid-sentence. There is no sign of struggle inside, no blood, no collapse of poles. Then there are the cuts, long, clean slashes through thick fabric, impossible to mistake as accidental. Why would seasoned hikers abandon their shelter without clothes in such cold? Why would they not simply exit through the entrance? Whatever they believed was happening outside that tent felt more dangerous than freezing to death. As days pass during the search, unease grows among the rescuers. The footprints leading away from the tent do not overlap. They show individual paths, suggesting the group moved together, but not in chaos. At the cedar tree, broken branches high above the ground suggest someone climbed, perhaps to look back toward the tent or scan the slope. Beneath the tree, remnants of a fire are found, small and desperate. Skin on the hands of the two bodies there is damaged in ways consistent with severe cold and frantic movement. They were alive here for some time, trying to do something, trying to survive. Higher up the slope, the three bodies positioned between the tree and the tent seem to tell another story. Their postures suggest effort, not rest. One arm raised, a leg bent as if pushing forward. These are not people who lay down to sleep. These are people who were trying to go somewhere and never arrived. The four bodies in the ravine deepen the mystery further. They are better dressed, wearing clothes removed from others, a known survival practice in extreme cold. This suggests that some members lived long enough to make decisions, to adapt, but their injuries defy simple explanation. Rib fractures so severe they would require immense force. A skull crushed inward, no defensive wounds, no signs of a fight. The medical examiner notes that such injuries resemble those caused by a powerful impact, yet the surrounding environment shows no evidence of collapse or fall sufficient to explain them. Snow can kill quietly, but it does not usually crush bone like this. The investigation, from its earliest days, feels uneasy. Reports are inconsistent. Some documents disappear. Certain findings are downplayed. The case is closed with language that answers nothing while appearing official. Families are given little comfort. Whispers begin almost immediately, not because people want mystery, but because the facts resist silence. Over the years, explanations multiply. Some point to natural forces, others to human error, others to secrets buried in the Cold War landscape. But before theories harden, before speculation fills the gaps, there remains the raw human moment on that mountainside. 9 people, trained and prepared, faced with something that made them cut their way out of safety and walk barefoot into death. This is where we begin, not with answers, but with the stillness after disaster. A tent torn open, footprints fading into snow, bodies returned by the mountain in pieces, as if unwilling to tell the story all at once. The Dyatlov Pass incident endures not because it is strange, but because it is incomplete, and because it forces us to confront how quickly control can vanish in the face of nature. If preparation, intelligence, and teamwork were not enough to save them on that slope, what exactly did they encounter in those final moments that convinced them there was no other choice? Before the mountain took them, before the snow sealed their names into history, they were simply people living ordinary lives in an extraordinary time. To understand what happened on that frozen slope, we must step away from the tragedy and return to the warmth of classrooms, crowded dormitories, and train stations filled with steam and laughter. We must meet them while they are still alive, still planning, still certain that discipline and preparation can bend nature to human will. The Soviet Union in the late 1950s is a country rebuilding itself with relentless energy. The scars of war are still visible, but optimism is encouraged, almost required. Young people are expected to study hard, work harder, and prove their value to the state through competence and endurance. Technical universities produce engineers meant to shape the future, and outdoor clubs exist not merely for leisure, but for forging resilient citizens. Hiking, skiing, and mountaineering are treated as character tests. To endure winter is to prove loyalty not just to oneself, but to a larger ideal. Igor Dyatlov fits perfectly into this world. He is methodical, respected, and quietly confident. As a radio engineering student, he is known for building things that work, devices that function under pressure. He is not reckless or theatrical. Those who know him describe someone steady, someone others naturally follow. Leadership, in his case, is not declared but assumed. When he proposes a winter expedition of the highest difficulty category, people trust him. The group that gathers around him is diverse in personality but unified in competence. There is Zinaida Kolmogorova, energetic and determined, known for her strength and endurance. Yuri Doroshenko, tall and confident, once chased a bear away from camp with nothing but bravado and a cooking pot. Lyudmila Dubinina, sharp-witted and uncompromising, who once continued a hike with a bullet wound after an accident at a firing range. Each member carries stories of resilience already tested. There is also Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest in the group, a war veteran whose past includes frontline combat. He joins late, a decision that will later feed speculation, but at the time feels ordinary. He wants the certification this expedition will grant, a mark of prestige even for someone who has already survived far worse. His presence adds experience, but also weight. He has seen death, and he does not fear the cold. They prepare carefully. Routes are planned, food is packed with precision, cameras are loaded, journals are ready. There is laughter in photographs taken before departure, the kind of casual joy that comes from shared challenge rather than ignorance of risk. They understand danger, but they trust systems. Training has taught them how to manage frostbite, how to ration calories, how to read weather. They believe, as many skilled people do, that knowing the rules means survival will follow. The journey begins by train, then by truck, then by foot and ski. Each stage strips away a layer of civilization. Villages grow smaller, roads fade into tracks. Finally, there is nothing but forest, snow, and sky. They write in their journals, teasing one another, noting small discomforts, joking about frozen beards and stiff fingers. There is no sense of dread in their words, only the familiar fatigue of effort. One member, Yuri Yudin, turns back early due to illness. It is a mundane decision, painful but practical. He is devastated to leave, frustrated by his own body. No one knows, standing there in the cold, that this decision will save his life. Later, he will be the last living witness to their optimism, the only one who remembers them walking away, laughing, into the trees. As the group pushes deeper into the wilderness, conditions worsen, but not unusually so for the season. Snow deepens, wind sharpens, progress slows. These are expected challenges, not alarms. They adjust their pace, make notes, sing songs to keep spirits high. Experience teaches them that morale is as important as technique. Their route takes them toward the slopes near Kholat Syakhl, a mountain known to the local Mansi people as a place of death. The name is not dramatic poetry, but practical warning, born of generations who understand how unforgiving this land can be. There is no evidence the hikers fear the name. Many places in the Urals carry ominous titles, and experienced travelers learn not to read destiny into words. Still, names linger, quietly shaping perception even when ignored. At some point, navigation becomes more difficult. Weather reduces visibility. The line between sky and ground dissolves into white. It is easy, in such conditions, to drift off course without realizing it. Whether through error or exhaustion, they find themselves on an exposed slope rather than sheltered forest. They debate, likely briefly, where to camp. Descending would take time and energy. Staying put feels efficient. They choose to pitch the tent where they are. This decision, later scrutinized endlessly, is not irrational in context. Experienced hikers often train themselves to endure poor conditions deliberately, to build skill and confidence. The slope is steep but manageable. Snow can be packed down. The tent is sturdy. They have done this before. Inside the tent, life feels normal. Boots come off, clothes are arranged, food is prepared. Diaries record the day with humor and mild complaint. Someone writes a playful mock newspaper, evidence of boredom rather than fear. The last photographs show no sign of panic. If something troubled them, it had not yet arrived. What matters here is not what they could not know, but what they did know. They knew how quickly cold could kill. They knew never to abandon shelter without protection. They knew that cutting a tent was a last resort, an act that destroys your primary defense. Any theory of what happened must pass through this filter. These people were not ignorant, not inexperienced, not careless in the ways that amateurs are. Survival training teaches one brutal truth above all others: panic kills faster than cold. The calm footprints found later suggest that whatever drove them out did not cause immediate chaos. This implies decision, not blind terror. Something forced them to choose between two dangers, and they chose the one they believed they could survive, at least briefly. The human mind under stress seeks patterns. It evaluates threat based on past experience. For this group, the unknown was not the cold. It was something else. Something that made freezing outside feel preferable to staying inside that tent. This is the core tension that shadows every detail of their preparation. They were ready for the mountain they expected, but perhaps not for the one they encountered. As the group settles into that final night, nothing marks it as historic. There are no final speeches, no premonitions recorded in ink, just 9 people doing what they have trained to do, trusting that morning will come and the route will continue. The tragedy of the Dyatlov Pass is not that they ignored danger, but that they respected it and still failed. If competence, experience, and discipline were all present, then what unseen factor slipped past their careful planning and waited until the moment they felt most secure? Morning does come, but not the way they expect. It arrives first as pressure, as sound, as movement in the dark that does not belong. To understand that night, we must slow the story down, strip it of rumor and hindsight, and examine the hours as they likely unfolded, one decision leaning quietly into the next. Winter travel in the northern Urals follows rhythms that are invisible to outsiders. Daylight is short. Temperatures fall rapidly after sunset. Wind reshapes the landscape hour by hour, erasing tracks, building drifts, loading slopes with unstable snow. Experienced hikers know that the mountain is not static. It breathes, shifts, and waits. Survival depends on reading subtle signs and responding early, before small problems become fatal ones. By the afternoon of their final day, the group is already tired. Skiing through deep snow consumes energy quickly, especially with heavy packs. Visibility worsens as wind picks up, blurring the horizon into a white void. Navigation becomes less precise. This does not mean panic, it means adjustment. They likely slow their pace, communicate more, check bearings repeatedly. Such conditions are uncomfortable, but familiar. What matters is that fatigue narrows judgment. Not enough to make foolish choices, but enough to favor efficiency. Camping on the slope saves time. It avoids losing altitude only to climb again in the morning. It keeps the group on schedule. In winter travel, staying on schedule feels like control. They cut into the snow to create a level platform for the tent. This is standard practice. Snow walls can even provide some wind protection. The tent goes up, poles are secured, skis may be used as anchors. Inside, the temperature rises slightly from body heat alone. Breath condenses on fabric, frost forms along seams. This is not comfort, but it is survival. Real-world winter survival emphasizes one priority above all others: maintain shelter. The tent is not just a place to sleep, it is a barrier between life and exposure. Losing it means immediate danger. That is why the slashes in the canvas are so important. No trained group would destroy its own shelter unless the alternative felt worse. Whatever happens next likely unfolds quickly, but not instantly. There is no evidence of a struggle inside the tent, no overturned gear, no signs of a collapse. This suggests a perceived threat rather than a physical one. Something that made staying inside feel unsafe, perhaps even fatal, but allowed time for decision. One possibility often overlooked is sound. In high winds, Snow and ice can produce low-frequency noise that disorients and induces panic. Another is movement. Snow can shift without warning, producing pressure against the tent that feels alive. A small slab release, not a full avalanche, could push snow against the fabric, pinning part of the structure and triggering fear of burial. Survival training teaches that if a tent is compromised on a slope, escape must be immediate. If they believed an avalanche was imminent, cutting their way out makes sense. Exiting through the entrance could be slower, blocked, or tangled. Knives are accessible. Fabric gives way faster than zippers in freezing conditions. In such a moment, speed matters more than equipment. The calm nature of the footprints supports this interpretation. Avalanches inspire urgency, but not necessarily blind terror if the initial threat has passed. They leave the tent and move downslope, away from the perceived danger. Distance creates safety. The forest below offers shelter, firewood, and visibility. But then the cold begins its work. -30 degrees does not feel dramatic at first. It feels numb. Fingers lose dexterity. Skin stiffens. Judgment narrows. Survival manuals warn that hypothermia impairs thinking long before it incapacitates the body. People begin making decisions that feel logical, but are deeply flawed. At the cedar tree, the group attempts to stabilize the situation. Fire is started. Branches are broken, some high above the ground, suggesting climbing for dry wood or visibility. 2 members remain here, perhaps tasked with maintaining the fire. Their injuries suggest prolonged exposure. Burns and abrasions on their hands imply desperate effort. They are alive long enough to suffer. At some point, others attempt to return to the tent. This is crucial. It means the initial threat no longer feels present. The mountain, in that moment, seems safer than the cold. 3 begin the climb back uphill. They do not make it. Their bodies mark the path of fading strength. Hypothermia slows muscles, clouds judgment, and eventually forces collapse. Death comes quietly, not violently. The remaining 4 move deeper into the forest. Their behavior suggests planning, not panic. They find a ravine, possibly seeking wind protection. Snow here is deeper. It can be hollow beneath the surface, forming natural traps. They build a makeshift shelter, using branches and snow. This is textbook survival technique. It indicates cognition, cooperation, and intent. Then, something goes wrong. The injuries they suffer are severe. Rib cages crushed inward, a skull fractured with force. These are not typical hypothermia outcomes. They suggest compression, impact, or collapse. Snow, when it accumulates in volume, becomes heavy beyond intuition. A sudden fall into a ravine, followed by snow settling or collapsing on top, can generate immense pressure. It does not tear skin. It does not leave obvious external trauma. It simply crushes. In such conditions, death may not be immediate. Some could have lived long enough to remove clothing from the deceased, redistributing insulation in a final effort to survive. This practice is documented in cold weather disasters. It is practical, not morbid. It means hope persisted until the end. Radiation found on some clothing later becomes a point of obsession, but context matters. Several members worked in facilities where low-level contamination was possible. The levels detected were not immediately lethal. They are unusual, yes, but not definitive proof of something extraordinary. In the Soviet Union, unusual does not always mean secret. Sometimes it simply means unspoken. What is striking is not that the group made mistakes, but that they followed survival logic step by step. Leave the danger, seek shelter, make fire, return when possible, build protection, share resources. Nothing about their actions suggests madness or irrational terror. It suggests adaptation under extreme stress. This reframes the incident away from spectacle and toward tragedy. The mountain did not need to be malicious. It needed only to be indifferent. Wind, snow, terrain, and cold combined in a sequence that punished small misjudgments with absolute severity. And yet, questions remain. Why was the tent cut in multiple places? Why did some leave more dressed than others? Why did they separate at all? Survival training also emphasizes group cohesion. Splitting increases risk. Something disrupted that cohesion, even if briefly. History teaches us that disasters rarely hinge on one cause. They emerge from chains of events, each one survivable alone, lethal together. The Dyatlov Pass incident fits this pattern with unsettling precision. No single moment explains everything. Each choice narrows the margin until there is none left. As dawn rises over the mountain, it reveals only absence. The wind smooths the slope. Snow fills footprints. Nature does not preserve evidence for human understanding. It erases it. If the group did everything their training taught them to do, and still did not survive, then where exactly does preparation end and vulnerability begin on a mountain that offers no mercy at all? When the hikers do not return on schedule, concern begins as a formality. Delays are common in winter expeditions. Weather alters plans. Routes take longer than expected. No one panics at first. But days pass, then more days, and the silence stretches beyond what experience can excuse. Families push for action. Authorities respond slowly, constrained by bureaucracy and habit. Eventually, search teams are assembled, made up of students, volunteers, soldiers, and pilots. The mountain is forced to give back what it took. From the beginning, the search feels unlike others. There is no clear trail to follow, no campsite smoke on the horizon. When the tent is found, intact but empty, the mood shifts. This is no longer a rescue. It is an inquiry into absence. The rescuers are trained to expect mistakes, injuries, exhaustion. They are not prepared for deliberate cuts in canvas, for boots left behind in snow that can kill bare skin in minutes. The discovery of the first bodies deepens the unease. Two beneath the cedar tree, dressed only in underwear, their skin darkened by cold and injury. The fire remnants tell a story of effort, but not of success. Searchers note the broken branches above, the scraped bark, the signs of climbing. They record these details carefully, though no one yet understands how they fit together. As more bodies are found, patterns refuse to form cleanly. The three on the slope appear to have died while moving uphill. Their spacing suggests intention, not collapse in one place. The ravine victims are different altogether, better dressed, more severely injured, buried deep under snow. It takes months for them to be found, and by then decomposition complicates interpretation. Still, the injuries cannot be ignored. The official investigation begins under pressure. The Soviet Union does not welcome mysteries, especially ones that involve young, capable citizens dying under unclear circumstances. Investigators are expected to produce answers, not questions. Yet every answer seems to generate more uncertainty. Medical examinations conclude that most deaths are caused by hypothermia. This is true, but incomplete. Hypothermia explains exposure, not crushed bones. It explains exhaustion, not missing soft tissue. One examiner notes that the force required to break ribs in the way observed would be significant, comparable to a high-speed collision. There are no external wounds to match, no sign of assault, no evidence of animals. The missing tongue and eyes in one body attract particular attention, but time and environment matter. Soft tissue degrades faster. Scavengers, water, and decomposition can remove what bone preserves. These details, though disturbing, may be less mysterious than they appear. Still, they linger in the imagination because they resist emotional resolution. Then there is radiation. Traces are found on some clothing, detected through testing that is not routine for such cases. The levels are elevated but not immediately lethal. This fact alone might not have mattered, but context transforms it. This is the Cold War. Nuclear secrecy saturates the landscape. Facilities handling radioactive materials exist across the country, often with limited oversight. Several hikers have backgrounds that could plausibly expose them to low-level contamination, but plausibility does not erase suspicion. It amplifies it. Documents begin to behave strangely. Some records are missing. Others are classified. Witness accounts conflict or change over time. The case file is closed abruptly, citing an unknown compelling force that the hikers were unable to overcome. The language is vague, almost poetic. It satisfies no one. The area around the incident is temporarily restricted. access is limited. This fuels speculation further. To the state, restriction is control. To the public, it is concealment. The truth may lie somewhere between. What must be remembered is that the Soviet investigative system is not designed for transparency. It is designed for closure. An unresolved case is an embarrassment. A mystery invites scrutiny. Scrutiny invites criticism. So the story is sealed, not solved. Families are left with fragments. Parents bury children without understanding how they died. Yuri Yudin, the lone survivor by absence, attends funerals and studies reports, carrying a burden of survival that will follow him for life. He will spend decades speaking cautiously, never claiming certainty, only describing what he knows and what he cannot reconcile. Over time, theories bloom in the vacuum left by silence. Military tests, secret weapons, infrasound, unknown creatures, foreign agents. Each theory reflects not only the evidence, but the fears of the era that produces it. In times of secrecy, imagination fills the gaps authority refuses to illuminate, but history demands restraint. The facts that can be verified are fewer and more stubborn. No signs of other people at the site, no weapons, no footprints beyond the group's own, no damage to the tent consistent with attack, no evidence of struggle between humans. The environment itself remains the only constant presence. Decades later, scientists revisit the case with fresh eyes and fewer political constraints. Snow mechanics are better understood. Human behavior under extreme stress is studied more deeply. Avalanche dynamics are modeled, including slab avalanches that leave minimal surface evidence. These reassessments suggest that natural explanations, once dismissed, may account for more than previously believed. Yet, even modern conclusions are careful. They do not claim certainty. They acknowledge probability. They accept that evidence lost to time cannot be recovered. Snow melts, records decay, memories shift. History does not preserve itself for our convenience. What the Dyatlov Pass incident reveals most clearly is not a hidden monster or secret weapon, but the limits of investigation itself. When environments are extreme and documentation is incomplete, truth becomes fragile. It bends under pressure. It fractures along ideological lines. This is why the incident endures. Not because it proves something extraordinary, but because it exposes how ordinary systems fail under extraordinary conditions. Young people trusted their training. Investigators trusted procedure. The state trusted silence. None of these trusts were rewarded. In the end, the official conclusion says little more than this. Something happened that the hikers could not survive. That statement is technically correct and emotionally empty. It leaves space for endless interpretation, for fear, for fascination. History often teaches us through resolution, but sometimes it teaches through absence, through unanswered questions that refuse to fade, through cases where every explanation fits part of the truth and leaves the rest in shadow. If the investigation itself became another victim of the mountain's indifference, then how much of what we believe about the past is shaped not by what happened, but by what was never allowed to be fully understood? Before we go any further, pause here for a moment. If you are still listening, still following this quiet trail of history through snow and silence, consider subscribing if you have not already. This channel survives only because people choose to stay. Without that support, the stories stop, the research ends, and the past fades back into darkness where it is easiest to forget. If these histories matter to you, this is how they stay alive. Time has a strange effect on unanswered questions. It sharpens some details while softening others, and it invites new voices to speak where old ones were silenced. In the decades since the Dyatlov Pass incident, the mountain has not changed, but the world around it has. Archives open, science advances, fear loosens its grip on explanation, and slowly, carefully, historians and researchers return to the evidence, not to sensationalize it, but to understand it on human terms. One of the most important shifts in recent years is the willingness to accept that multiple forces can act at once. Early debates demanded a single cause, something dramatic enough to explain every detail, but real disasters rarely work that way. They are layered. Environmental stress interacts with human judgment. Small decisions compound. Survival becomes a negotiation rather than a plan. Modern analysis of snow behavior has reshaped how we understand that final night. A slab avalanche, once dismissed because of the lack of obvious surface damage, is now considered plausible. Such avalanches can release suddenly, traveling only a short distance, exerting immense pressure and leaving behind little visible trace after subsequent snowfall. For people inside a tent, the sensation would be terrifying. A wall of snow pressing inward, collapsing part of the shelter, threatening suffocation. In that moment, cutting free and escaping downslope would be instinct reinforced by training. This does not require panic or irrationality. It requires only the belief that staying means death. The injuries in the ravine align with this possibility. Compression injuries caused by heavy snow can break ribs and skulls without tearing skin. A fall into a snow-filled ravine, followed by additional snow settling on top, could produce the forces described in the medical reports. Snow, when dense and moving, behaves less like powder and more like concrete. Human behavior under extreme cold also clarifies puzzling choices. Hypothermia alters perception in stages. First comes confusion, then poor judgment, then paradoxical calm. People may underestimate danger, misjudge distance, or believe they have more time than they do. The separation of the group, once seen as inexplicable, may reflect shifting priorities under stress rather than a single coordinated plan breaking apart. Clothing redistribution, too, fits known survival patterns. When death occurs in stages, survivors often remove garments from those who have already succumbed, using them to extend their own chances. This is not cruelty. It is instinct shaped by desperation. It tells us that hope lasted longer than comfort. Even the radiation, so often treated as a smoking gun, appears less decisive when viewed through a broader historical lens. Industrial exposure was poorly monitored in that era. Contaminated materials circulated more freely than acknowledged. Elevated readings, while unusual, do not necessarily point to an extraordinary event on the mountain itself. Sometimes, mystery persists, simply because context was never documented carefully enough. What remains powerful is not any single explanation, but the collective weight of them. The Dyatlov Pass incident may not be a puzzle waiting for one final piece. It may be a reminder that nature does not owe us clarity, and history does not always provide closure. And yet, the story matters. It matters because it shows how quickly expertise can be overwhelmed. These were not tourists. They were trained, capable, disciplined. They did not ignore danger. They met it head-on, using the tools and knowledge available to them. Their failure was not moral or intellectual. It was situational. It also matters because of how the story was handled afterward. Silence, classification, and vague conclusions did not protect the public. They fueled distrust and speculation. When institutions refuse to explain, people invent explanations. This pattern repeats across history, far beyond a single mountain pass. The Dyatlov Pass incident sits at the intersection of human resilience and human fragility. It shows us a group that adapted repeatedly, even as conditions worsened. They built fires, they sought shelter, they attempted to recover their tent, they shared resources, they did not surrender easily. Survival was pursued until the body itself could no longer comply. There is a temptation, especially in modern retellings, to turn this story into a spectacle, to chase the strangest detail and ignore the rest. But doing so diminishes the people at its center. These were individuals with humor, discipline, and plans for the future. Their journals and photographs show not doom, but life in motion. They deserve to be remembered not as symbols of mystery, but as examples of how ordinary humans confront extraordinary environments. History is full of such moments. Expeditions that vanished, settlements that failed, journeys that ended not with triumph, but with quiet loss. Most of them do not become legends. This one did because it occurred in a place and time where explanation was constrained and fear was amplified. Perhaps the most unsettling lesson is this. Even when we reconstruct events with care and compassion, something always escapes us. There is a gap between evidence and experience. We can measure injuries, map terrain, model snow behavior. We cannot fully inhabit the fear, cold, and exhaustion of that night. We cannot know the precise moment when hope shifted into inevitability. That gap is where humility lives. The Dyatlov Pass incident reminds us that history is not just a record of what happened, but of what could not be preserved. Snow erases footprints. Time erodes certainty. What survives are fragments, and our responsibility is to handle them honestly. In the end, the mountain remains, silent, unmoved by attention. It does not confirm or deny any theory. It simply exists, as it did before and after those 9 people passed through its shadow. Nature does not remember us. We remember each other. And so the question lingers, not as a demand for a single answer, but as an invitation to reflect. When preparation meets uncertainty and resilience meets indifference, how thin is the line between survival and becoming another quiet story that history struggles to explain?